Wilkie Collins. They are the later Victorian novelists, and their works, if we take in our lecture at length, we cannot give full justice to our presentation, and because of the shortage of time, we can only look at a very short glance to the novels of Thomas Hardy and his works. If we look at the works of Thomas Hardy, we find that Under the Greenwood Tree, A Pair of Blue Eyes, Far from the Madding Crowd, The Return of the Native, The Woodlanders, The Tess of D'Urberville, and Jude the Obscure. They are the very famous work of Thomas Hardy. And especially The Tess of D'Urberville is one of the best works of Thomas Hardy. And especially when the end of the novel, that we find that the Tess is taken to the capital punishment, that is guillotine, and then she is given a capital punishment, that is a guillotine. That means she was given the sentence, a death sentence. And it was for the first time that a lady gets a death sentence in the English literature for the first time. And Thomas Hardy has presented a very beautiful line from the novel. The chapter of the novel ends with a very beautiful line of Thomas Hardy. I would like to quote a very famous sentence from the book itself. I quote, "The President of Immortals has ended his sport with Tess." Unquote. Thomas Hardy believed that we human beings are nothing but the tools in the hands of God. And we have to suffer a lot on this earth because of our fate. And this part is majorly reflected in the works of Thomas Hardy. If we look at the Victorian novelists and the later Victorian novelists, they are Thomas Hardy, Robert Stevenson, Benjamin Disraeli, Charles Kingsley, and Wilkie Collins. George Meridis is a Victorian novelist, and his chief works are The Adventures of Henry Richmond and The Egoist. Now, if we look at the work that is The Egoist, that is George Meredith considered to be the most convincing novels of the Victorian age. And George Meredith occupies a place as a novelist in later Victorian novelist group. But the most important novelist of this later Victorian period is Thomas Hardy. He occupies a central place among the later Victorian novelists. And if we look at the work of Thomas Hardy, one work that I have not mentioned here in this my slide is The Mayor of Casterbridge, the novel that he has written during the time of Victorian era is also an important work of Thomas Hardy. The Mayor of Casterbridge is a very powerful story of Michael Henchard, the central character of the novel. Michael Henchard is a very old man, and he passes through number of sufferings, success, and ups and downs in life. Michael Henchard starts his journey from an inn in a seaside town. Thomas Hardy describes the very beautiful scenes of the novel The Mayor of Casterbridge. Michael Henchard drinks wine at an inn, and then he drinks too much. He loses his control over his body. Then he has no money to pay for the wine. So he declares that if anyone pays my money for this bottle of wine, I will sell my wife to that particular fellow. Then the story moves further that the person who pays the money to the innkeeper takes the wife and then leaves the town. And after an hour, Michael Henchard realizes his position. He gets consciousness, become aware of himself, and then tries to find his wife. Where is she? But then he comes to the seashore and finds the ship has already left the place. Then the novel moves further. Michael Henchard then comes to another place, that is another village. There he lives his life, works hard as a farmer, and then grows number of products, and then becomes a rich farmer. Then prosperity comes to the life of Michael Henchard. He becomes prosperous, and then in the town another fellow comes, and then there is a context of the mayor between these two persons. Michael Henchard becomes the mayor of the town, and then after working as a mayor for number of years, then we find that there is a sudden decline in the life of Michael Henchart. And we find the story moves further and further. Michael Henchart then he loses his battle of mayorship with another young character. And then we find that Michael Henchart loses his battle, and at the end of the novel, we find that he would like to meet his death, and then nobody should place any kind of flowers to his grave. And Michael Henchart dies with a sad heart, and the novel ends with the death of Michael Henchart. If we look at the conclusion of the Victorian novelist, we find the following things that we find in the Victorian age. All these novelists, the Victorian novelists, hold an important place in the history of English literature during the Victorian era. The novel as a form enjoyed a lot during this age. The novel has prospered and progressed systematically during this age. We find different kind of novels. The industrial novel, the first part that we had seen, the industrial novel in the works of Charles Dickens. The first part that we find in the works of Charles Dickens. The industrial novel is also known as the social novel. And we find this industrial kind of novel in the works of Charles Dickens, then Disraeli, and Mrs. Gaskell. Then another important kind of novel is the silver fork novel. Now this type of novel we find in the works of W.M. Thackeray. William Maxfield Thackeray has written about the rich class of the society. Unlike Dickens, he wrote on the very prosperous and the rich class of the society, that is well-to-do people, very refined, very cultured people of his time. So his novel, like the Vanity Fair, belongs to this second type of novel, that is the silver fork novel. Third is the psychological novel that we find in the works of George Eliot. In the major works of George Eliot, if we look at some of her best novels, like Adam Bede, then if we look at his another novel, that is The Meal on the Floss, and then Romola, and Daniel Deronda, and Middlemarch, we find this very common aspect of psychoanalytical analysis of the characters of George Eliot. If we look at the conclusion, then we find the suspense novel that we find in the work of Robert Louis Stevenson, and his Mr. Jekyll and Hyde shows for the first time a dual personality of a man, and it is known in psychology as a schizophrenia personality or dual personality of the novel. And the novels for children that we find in also the work of Robert Stevenson. At the end of my presentation, I would like to say that Victorian age is an important age of English literature which has given a number of novelists. The works of Thomas Hardy are considered to be the great works of Victorian novel, but due to the shortage of time, we cannot give full justice to Thomas Hardy and all his works. But in a just brief, I had given my best to the topic, that is the Victorian novelist. And at the end of my presentation, I would like to say that Victorian age is an important age of English literature which has given a number of novelists. I would like to thank you, all of you, and then I would like to give your comments to me on my mobile number that is given. It is 98980 Thanks.
SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.